a little honeybee.
Okay, so I'm Harold Lanier with Lanier Bee Barn, and we've got a brand new product for you today that I'm just so thrilled and so excited about having. And it's new product to the U.S. It's been in Australia, made in Australia, been there for a few years, and we'll get a little bit of its history. But this product here from a company called Hive IQ is, like, I think, one of the best, newest products with such innovations that it's just got me captivated. And this is something that I'm so looking forward to. I've been running a few of these in my apiary for a while, and they are doing fantastic. I plan to take a bunch of these and replace a lot of my wooden hives with these. And I think we'll talk about all the features that it's got. Victor's going to go into a lot of detail. This is Victor Croker. He's the CEO of Hive IQ, all the way from Australia to visit with us. And so give us a little bit of time and talk through some new products, new options and features that are coming out later this year and early next year. And I'll tell you guys, this product is so well thought out. I can tell from the time I first saw it that it is a product that's built by a beekeeper. There are other EPS type products out there, but none of them are this well built. And when I first saw pictures of it, I almost scanned past it because when I looked at it, I thought, oh, just another styrofoam hive. And you know, my thoughts about those, which lack experience, to be honest with you, but my thoughts about them are, okay, when I start to pry these apart, my hive tool is going to booger it all up and just make a mess of it, and ultimately, you know, I'd have to replace them. But when I saw the exploded diagram that they have of these and show these protective rims, he'll talk about this in particular. These guys, I'm telling you, your hive tools work great. The bees tend not to propolize these very much. They're so easy to get apart. The insulation factor, he's going to go into a lot of detail about the benefits of the insulation. But trying to get your hives through winter, especially a small hive, is just incredible. So I'm so excited about it. I can't wait to get mine into the winter mode, so to speak. The ones I'm running out here right now, I've got hives out there that are 4 stories tall, 4 deeps, and probably need some more room. And they are just really killing it. So I'm so excited. I'm happy with the product, how it's performing. I've been using it since about March of this year, and the bees love it, and it's fantastic. So without going into a lot more detail, Victor, I'd like you, if you would, give us a little background from where you're coming from, because I know this is not a product designed by a bunch of marketing guys who think they can sell another version of a beehive. This is built by beekeepers with all the beekeeper problems in mind, and they've solved so many of these problems that it's mind-blowing to me to come out with kind of a first-generation product, and especially here in the U.S. And I've got a bunch of these in stock ready for sale, so we can get these in your hands. You can come to my shop and touch them and feel them, and we'll talk about them, that kind of thing, and we can ship them out to you and that type of stuff too. But at any rate, Victor, give us a little bit of your background and how you got into beekeeping and such.
Yeah, thanks, Harold. Yeah, I guess I'm a 3rd generation commercial beekeeper. It all started with my grandmother back when she was in her 20s, so early 1900s, maybe 1930s. During the World War period, things were tough, and she discovered beekeeping, and she discovered that she could do quite well and she had built up to around 100, 120 hives. And she discovered she could do really, really well in that area where she was living in the Riverina area in New South Wales, where a lot of the orchards, a lot of our food, it's our food bowl, one of our food bowls in Australia. And so she's the son of the 1st generation. And then my dad and my uncle started they got into it in a bigger way, and they have a beekeeping enterprise that had 2,500 hives. And I just remember, as a boy, or even a toddler, every time I'd get a chance to get out on the bees, I'd be jumped in the truck. I'd have my bag packed, waiting in the truck, and Dad would have to drag me out. You've got to go to school. But school holidays, I was there. I was out in the bees, So he had the 2,500 hives. The first thing I did when I finished school is go beekeeping. So for quite a few years, I was just a full-time commercial beekeeper working with my dad. It was a migratory operation, running wooden Langstroth hives all over. And we were migratory, so we moved large distances. And then I had a little bit of a break from beekeeping, but I got tricked back into it by my business partner, Dave. You did it, Dave. And I think it might have involved a really fine bottle of port too, I think, at the time.
Yeah,
perhaps a cigar.
A lot of ideas happen over.
So we got into it, and he said, I said to him, okay, we can get it 10 hives. He said, oh, I was thinking more a couple of hundred. Oh, so you want to go commercial? And I thought about it for a while, maybe 10 minutes. It's funny how beekeeping gets in your blood, right? It's hard to explain what bees do. They get into your soul, right? And in your blood. And so it doesn't take much. If you take a break from beekeeping, almost guarantee you're going to come back. So anyway, Dave and I, we started our business in 2010, operating out of his car garage, and we built about 160 10-frame Langstroth wooden hives, and we got them out in the field and working. And I remember 2010, that winter was brutal, was wet, cold. I just popped the lids on our hives one day. We went down to inspect them, and they were down the south coast, and the outer wall frames were mouldy. The bees were clustered up. There was bees that were on the ground that didn't make it home, and it was just, and it hitched, like I said, hitching the soul.
It does.
And I said to Dave, this is crazy. There's got to be a better way, right? This mad. It's got to be insulation. So we started doing some internet searching, and we discovered that the Europeans have been using high density EPS, or maybe not high density. This material is probably something that's quite new, but this type of insulation for beehives since the 70s. So it's nothing new. What we're doing here is not really anything new. So we purchased a whole bunch. Like I think we purchased a couple hundred, 150 I think it was. We got them in and we assembled them, and I think we knew straight away. It was a high five moment when we put them together. We had a really strong gut feel that this is going to help the bees, and so we went and put all our bees into half of our bee. We made up some splits off our timber hives, and we put them in there. And I remember that within a couple of hours we could walk back to the hive that we took out of we transferred from a wooden Langstroth hive that was miserable and wet, and we put it into here. 2 hours later we went back and we popped the lids, and we could see straight away the difference. It was
big relief to the bees.
Huge. And like I said, it just makes you feel good when you see your bees happy and comfortable, and they're going to removing all that stress. That's a huge amount of stress when they're dealing with condensation and moisture in the hive. So
we're in the southeast, the United States, in northeast Georgia, and like yesterday, temperatures were 97, and the heat index was like 125 or something. Humidity got up to about 74% yesterday. It was pretty brutal. We have a lot of, and I'll just have to interject real quick, I'm sorry, but one of my biggest fears, and I talked to Victor about this back in, I want to say maybe November of last year, and condensation was my biggest thing. And Victor, he says, no, we don't have any condensation. Between me and you, really, well, now the internet, that was my biggest fear. And it was like, okay, we'll wait and see. We'll see what they do. And I can tell you guys, you can go out there on any humid day. I don't care if it's right after rain or any high humid day. Pop the lid, no moisture.
Yep.
No moisture.
That's one of the first things we saw. Like within the next day, we went from having water dripping out of the lid in the wooden hive to transferring them into the EPS hives.
Mm-hmm.
Pop the lid, no moisture dripping, and so it was just to us, it was just one of those moments we thought, high five, this is definitely, we're onto something here. So we put them in, it was winter, we did the transfer. Normally you wouldn't be opening your hives in winter, but we made the decision, well, let's get them into something warm. Okay, they're going to be a little bit cold while we do the transfer, but it paid off. By the end of that next spring, and we kept data, we logged, and we ran both together, so we were moving them together. So, an apiary would have about 50-50 wooden. So we'd go and harvest our EPS hives, or our hives, and we'd find that the EPS hives would be full of honey, but the timber hives were not ready. So we'd take the honey off the timber hive, off the EPS hives, and we'd have to come back in a week, because wait for the wooden hives to catch up. And the difference depends on how extreme the weather is. So if you're during the more, sort of climates where it's pretty comfortable, the difference is not as great. But the more extreme heat or cold, these just accelerate. It's kind of a snowball effect, a compounding effect.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so the first thing we found, probably the 5 things that come to mind, that if I can say the benefits we saw. First, honey production just went through the roof, like just incredible amount of in gain on honey. The condensation was another, that's probably the second big thing. So giving the colony just a comfortable dry, because condensation is the enemy of bees. It really rattles them. It's hard on bees, shortens their lifespan. The third thing we saw was a reduction in our disease. So, when I'm talking about disease is like nosema. We haven't seen symptoms of nosema in our insulated hive, in these hives.
Nice. Since
I switched. That problem, nosema, the symptom of nosema really is when you're coming into spring, the bees just don't want to get into gear, like they struggle. And even though there's plenty of nice conditions now starting to emerge, it's spring, they take weeks to get into, and then finally they recover from that bee flu, nosema, and then they kick into gear. Well, these guys, that's one of the reasons these guys bounce into spring. They bounce into spring, and we're pulling a box of honey off here before our wooden hives have even started to sort of think about filling the box with honey. So where was I? Had 5 things. So transport. Transport is stressful for bees. In Australia, you guys have got beautiful roads here, and I know your commercial beekeepers travel. I've been driving around in America in the last 6 weeks. I've seen huge semi-trucks with nets, and your roads are beautiful. It's not the case in Australia. So we have pretty rough roads, often gravel. We're going into bee sites in remote locations, long distances on rough roads, and the bees are getting there really rattled about. Wood is a really hard substance. The shock wave comes straight through into the colony. So what we notice when we pull up at the apiary, after we've done this trek through this rough road, is the timber hives or wooden hives, they'd be all flustered and hanging out the front and bearding and a bit aggro and distressed. They're really distressed. Yeah. And we'd have to let them calm down before we started unloading, just give them a time to cool it. Our EPS hives, well, maybe they're dead. Where are the bees? There'd be just a few sitting at the front. So straight away we thought, well, that's pretty cool, because those bees are riding on the truck so much better. And now thinking, well, if we're not distressing our bees during that transport mode, how's that? What's the compound effect of that? So if we're losing bees that are coming out and blowing off the truck and dying from stress, what's that compound effect? When we land them on the ground, they're just going to start off at a stronger, better point, less stress. Yeah. And then the final thing is assembly and handling. Now, timber hives, 10-frame timber hive weighs, when it's full of honey, it weighs probably around 30 to 35 kilograms, which is about 70, 80.
Well, we get some of our 10 frames, if they're packed out, they can be close to 100 pounds. So 10 frame deep.
So so see the size of this handle here, right? You got 80 pound hanging off, and it's hanging off the tips of your fingers, right?
Right.
It's really hard on your hands. So what we discovered is the comfort of this material. It's soft on your hand, you've got nice radiuses, and you've got deep handles. And so we found that, and our guys,
a lot easier to handle.
Our guys would prefer to go and work our EPS hives any day than our timber hives, and so that was one thing. Assembly, super fast. So with a timber hive, we were, to make sure they lasted the distance, we'd nail them together, and you got, like, I don't know, I lost count, but there's 40 or 50 nails in a timber hive, maybe more. So that all takes time. You've got to sand it, paint it, and if you don't do some kind of anti-rot protection, like dipping them in hot wax, they'll only last 5 years, and you can poke your finger through the rot holes within 5 years. So then we've got to replace that equipment. Well, the EPS hives, 5 years in, they were still running it. There was the same level of integrity. They hadn't lost any integrity. You might get the odd bump or bang, a mark, which you do on any hive. You scratch the paint or whatever. But we noticed that the hives were just longevity. And then, like I said, on assembly time is really important for a commercial beekeeper. It's probably not so important for a hobbyist. You can get in and tinker in your shop.
Yeah, you have all weekend to put 2 of them together.
You got all weekend. You can come back next weekend.
Yeah.
Right. But commercial beekeepers increase in numbers rapidly, so they might say, well, we want to gain in numbers by another 300, 500, 1,000, 2,000. And these go together at about 1/5 of the time of a timber hive. And so my team can put together, we can put 500 hives together in a couple of weeks and have them painted and ready for the field. It's just not possible with wooden hives. And so so the terminology is getting bees on grass faster. So it's kind of a business case thing.
Right.
Getting them out there, earning their keep. As a commercial beekeeper, it's all about the business case and return on investment. So we save on labour, we get bees out there faster. You know, when we're ramping up for the almonds and we want to increase, for example, another 500 hives for the next almond crop, we can do it so much faster with this hive. So there's kind of the 5 benefits, a bit long-winded. But
yeah, a lot of Victor's focus, of course, he's a very large commercial beekeeper in Australia, but a lot of these benefits translate down to even a backyard beekeeper with just a couple hives. You may not move your hives from place to place to do migratory pollinations and things like that, but I'll tell you, one of the big things, and he'll go into more detail once we start pulling it down and looking at the parts, the insulation thing is, I think, probably one of the biggest factors in terms of the health of our hives, because, and he'll go into more detail about this, but if you think about it, if your bees have to struggle to either keep a hive cold in the summer, cool in the summer, or warm in the winter, or battling other pests and diseases, they can't, they're not doing their job as far as what we're concerned, as far as gathering nectar and making honey, right? So not only are they taking time away from that task, but once they're healthier, it takes a lot less effort inside the hive to stay healthier, right? And so all those, they can have a more hygienic environment for the brood and all that, and so your bee populations are going to be positively affected by that, and their productivity. And so it's a very huge compound effect. So we're gonna take a look now at all the components. And by the way, we have right now basically a starter kit, if you will, that's available. I think our introductory price now is right $250, somewhere that ballpark. But that'll come with a bottom board, 3 deep hive bodies, a queen excluder, and the top for that price. There's no frames included, but you can actually transfer all your frames out because they are standard Langstroth frames. So all the frames that you currently have, you can reuse. Right now, we just have the deep hive bodies, but Victor will tell us a little more later. We're going to be looking at some mediums and some shallow hive bodies. So you guys that run those types of equipment, will have all of that available. But these hives, think about this as we go through the process here. You have a small colony. Like I've got some right now that I've just recently done splits, and they're small colonies. And what better way to be sure they overwinter better by putting them in something that's more insulated, right? I'm really looking forward to that. So I'm going to be transferring a bunch of mine into these for the winter, and I just can't wait for that to happen. So Victor, go ahead and let's talk a little bit about all the components here,
Sure.
And then we'll go deeper into options. Now, we're probably not going to answer all your questions in this video. Leave questions down below in our comments, and I'll try to get to them as best I can. If I can't answer it, I know somebody who can answer it. And by the way, they run these in their operation. They've been running these for a few years, so it's not like it just came to market and all of us are getting now to see what their hives are all about and how they perform. They've been in a commercial production environment for quite a while. So with that in mind, this is not a totally brand new product as far as this architecture, if you will, introducing to the market. It has some experience with it. There's several beekeepers down in Australia running them already too, and I'm happy to say I'm the very first signed reseller in the United States, and probably there aren't very many on the East Coast. I'm in Georgia, so I'm in kind of the southeast. There's a lot of them out on the left coast, but we are the first to sign with them in the United States. So I'm kind of pleased about that. I'm really looking forward to this coming winter actually, and spring in particular. So.
Yeah. So we really appreciate Harold being one of the early adopters. That's been fantastic. So what you see here is the next generation beehive, and this is a result of around 12 years of evolution. So from testing what's been available in the market in this type of in different insulated hives to now. And so Dave and I mean, we're out in the bees, we're around campfire, and we're always discussing problems and shortfalls and how we can fix them. So problem solving is really what this is. This is a result of a lot of problem solving.
Yeah.
So for commercial beekeeping, for optimising a beehive like this for commercial beekeeping, there's a few key critical things. One is form factor. So the width, because beekeepers in Australia, and I think a lot of them here in the US, ship their hives 4 hives on a pallet.
Right.
And the 10 frame version of the EPS hives, because they've got walls, the walls are quite a lot thicker, means we can't fit them 6 wide, so we end up with an odd number 5. It doesn't work 4 hives on a pallet, right? So we started with the form factor, and we came up with the 9 frame hive. So we've got walls that are 1.9/16 to 40 millimetres with 9 frames, and it still has a sufficient gap in here for manoeuvring the frames. So that's the first thing, form factor. And then we'll start from the top down, shall we?
Yeah.
So the hive top is a really important part of an EPS hive, because this protects it from, and this ensures durability and robustness, and especially in commercial beekeeping where we're transporting them and we're putting pallets of hives on top of pallets of hives on the truck, and we're strapping them down with really heavy duty straps. So, and so we needed a product to stand up. So the first thing we did was come up with a single piece of single pressed metal cover, which is built. So this is powder coated. So this is a heavy grade metal pressed out of one. And so what we end up with as a result here is a very rigid top. These indentations also add to the strength, and all these nice radiuses make it easier to work and handle the hives, because I don't know, we were always getting hooked up on the corners, the sharp corners.
Snag your bee suit and tear a hole in it.
Yeah, we're tearing holes in our bee suits.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful round surface, everything's flush mounted, nothing can get hooked up on the trucks. And the old wire ones, one hive would get hooked and bend up the middle.
Yeah.
So all of that. So that's important. The body of the lid is really important. It's a solid block of ultra high density EPS, and the density is super important. You can hear that. It's hard.
Yeah, it's not like your typical styrofoam drink cooler. No, it's
Right.
extremely
So it's
dense.
extremely hard, and this is very important because bees naturally have a tendency to excavate soft material. So in the wild, when they go into a hollow log, first thing they do is excavate all soft material.
Yeah.
So if you try putting bees in a low density, like for example a broccoli box or a fruit box, they're going to turn it into powder.
Yeah.
So the density is really important. And then getting back to the ruggedization and durability, implementing this hardened edge, this high impact UV stable plastic edge, where we can operate a sharp hive tool, so it's not digging into the product. So, and then we'll move on to the body. So I want to show you, continuing with that same theme of this hardened edge, and this is nothing new, but this interlocking design is critical for, I think, 3 key reasons. One is for transport. So it's just from commercial, we're putting them on the truck, and we forever having boxes, our wooden boxes would slide a little bit, and then we'd have a whole stack of honey robbed out.
Yeah.
So this can't really happen. And then when we're transporting hives, the boxes on the road, and we're going through heavy rain, the water's coming in, we're getting moisture in the boxes, and then you've got that concern of whether you're going to have too high moisture. So that's really critical.
With that interlocking design right there, not only do they sort of snap together, line together, but they keep the drafts out. And the bees, I'm telling you, they don't tend to propolize these boxes near the way they do a wooden box, because there's not any gaps really that they worry about. And you get no wind through there, especially for the winter. That's great. And also because of this rim, any rain water that's on the outside is not going to translate into the inside.
That's correct, yeah. Probably the final thing about this is just how it all goes together. So one thing that's really important is it has to be able to be shipped flat packed. Well, I think you call it collapse style.
Yeah.
It's a flat pack because the shipping costs. If we ship that as an assembled product, the shipping cost is you're basically paying for air.
Yeah.
So we wanted to make it really flat packed and then easy to assemble. So the way we designed this is we put a lot of design into this and our industrial design.
Right.
John and I and Dave spent a lot of time thinking about how we could put this together and to achieve this outcome. So all these parts come in the box with the product. So you've got your sides and end protective strips. These are extrusions. And then we've got these corner parts that slide in. And then we have a lug that comes in under here where we screw it together. So we get all the parts together, press it together, and I won't go into an assembly. Let's not make this
We'll do assembly later.
a video, but bottom line is it goes together really easy, and then at the end you have a nice clean product. Because aesthetically pleasing was one of our requirements. If you're going to do it, let's make it look pretty cool. So it's nice. There's no exposed screws. So that's the body. Oh, the final thing I didn't mention is pest protection. Is what we found in EPS. Bugs love EPS. Ants. It's
like
warm.
a nice warm.
It's a stable product.
Yeah, dry place to be. Yeah.
And it doesn't off gas. So they like it. They can go in there. It's beautiful material to handle. In the extreme cold, you can walk up to an EPS product and put your hand on it, and your hand's not going to stick to it.
Yeah, right.
And in the hottest day, you can walk up and not burn your hand. It's the bugs would come into this crack here. So even if your box didn't sit down properly, maybe there's a bit of burr came or something you didn't scrape. If there was a gap here, they would come in here and lay all their eggs. And so we've removed that space by just having a perfect seal here, a very positive seal, and the plastic. They don't like plastic. They can't do anything in there. So that solved the bug problem. We move on. We'll move on to the frame setup inside the hive. So first thing I want to point out is the frame rest. We put a lot of thought into this frame rest because we found that some of the designs left a gap underneath the end lug. So underneath the end lug, and that's where your hive beetles and the like would.
Yeah, so most people are probably not aware of this, but if you look carefully at a frame, you'll see that the top bar there is a taper here. So when it sits on something flat, there is a gap underneath. And if you live in the southeast, I can't speak too much for the northern climes, but one of our big challenges is small hive beetles.
Right. Yeah. So our frame rest follows the same
Tapered as well,
taper as the frame. So when the frame's sitting in, there's nowhere for beetles to hide.
Yeah.
Solve problems. And then it's nice and clean. So if they do happen to put a bit of propolis in between the frames here, and different colonies have different rates of propolis, it's really easy just to scrape that out. So it takes a standard Langstroth frame. This is a deep, what you call a deep in Australia. We kind of call it full depth, but either way. What we have coming in this coming spring is two more sizes. So we have shallows and we have mediums.
Shallows and mediums. Those are real big here in the States.
Yeah. So we see them as really important, and I'm really impressed with how the Americans use mediums because the weight of a full depth box is getting to the point where it's almost occupational health and safety risk.
Yeah.
So the medium, I like that medium idea. I'm looking forward to getting those into production this coming spring. You can put things in here like a standard divider feeder, but we have a hive top feeder coming and we'll cover that off shortly.
We've got a queen excluder behind you.
Alright, so let's just show you the queen excluder quickly. One of the issues we had with the queen excluder on this type of hive with the interlocking is the queen excluder traditionally would sit there. So when you put the next box on, like this, you've got a pretty serious gap here. That's an insulation problem. It's a bug problem. So we solved that with our cleaning excluder design. So we've set up all the bee space. And again, bee space, I'm a bigot on bee space because when you're working hives, if you screw the bee space up, the boxes glue together so much hard, it just slows your whole day down trying to get your hives apart. And that's the cool thing about this product too, is because it's stable, it doesn't move like timber. Timber contracts and bends and buckles and shrinks, and the bee spaces can be a bit random on a wooden hive. The bee space on this hive is precise at every turn, and that's a critical part of it. And back to the queen excluder, you can see, hopefully the camera can pick that up, but the queen excluder sits down on the frames and inside the walls of the hive. And we've done extensive testing on this concept. You know, we were concerned that, you know, maybe we need the bee space under the queen excluder, but what we've done is just lifted the bee space that's on top. And we find, we tested with and without, we've done extensive testing, and we get just as much honey out of this setup as a traditional type of queen excluder setup. And it means that when you put the supers on, you've got a perfect seal here. So there's no gap.
Right. Yeah.
We'll move down to the foundations of the hive. Let's go to the foundations, which is the hive base. Hopefully the camera can pick up the base. We'll start on the bottom. So we do a lot of things around the base. So we've got a lot of options coming. So we were thinking about future proofing. So as we work through, I'll explain some of the future features that are coming. The rails here are very important in the hive, because if you've got a very weak colony, for example, and you need to close down a bit of this ventilated floor area, you can slide a piece of that plastic,
corrugated plastic.
Corrugated plastic. We call it, in Australia, we call it core flute. Slides in, so it's a simple solution. The rails are also here for catching the pollen. We can slide a pollen receptacle in here, and we'll cover off the pollen collector shortly. At the front here, what I should say, just in preparation for what we've got coming now, our software and our technology, we've included the NFC tag, which is near field communication tag. It's basically RFID, the next generation of RFID. So they're already on there. So watch this space. We'll have an app on the App Store fairly soon that you can use to scan this, and it'll basically load the dashboard for your hive, and it'll integrate nicely into the software. So watch this space on the NFC tag.
So this will give us, guys, a way to uniquely identify every hive that you have out there. Take your phone, get up there, and it'll bring up the information that put your notes in, and that kind of thing right there in the field. So you can then actually go back to your desktop, right, and review everything that goes on about the bee yard. Identify your problem hives, set a game plan for next time you go out and work your bees.
So that's for the beekeeper. I mean, if you don't choose not to use it, you can just ignore it, but it's standard in the hive. The entrance, we were really not happy with the entrances that were available in some of these more modern hives. One issue we had was some of them have slides, and there's a slot, and then which means there's a lip that the bees have to climb over to get in and out of the hive, ingress and egress. And what we discovered is you find dead bees and chalk brood and drones stuck behind here, so it's a hygiene issue. So what we wanted was a flat floor, so the bees can come and go uninhibited. They land and run straight in, or come straight out. And if there's a dead bee, or if you've got some chalk brood or whatever, and they need to get that out of the hive, they can just carry
more
it
difficult unless you have this flat surface.
The next important part of the entrance is bees. We discovered through a lot of testing, research, and just field experience that bees don't particularly like a wide entrance, and it becomes a real issue you call it the dearth, but it's a terminology we don't use in Australia. But we have those periods in Australia where there's no honey coming in, and you've got 120 or more colonies at an apiary, and they start to think, well, maybe I can steal a little bit of honey off that weak colony over there. And if you've got a weaker colony in here, this wide entrance they've got to put a big defence force here to protect it, and it's almost impossible. So, and in the wild too, I think the fish, there's a lot of research on the size of an entrance, and I think you mentioned that earlier.
Tom Seeley did a lot of research and basically discovered that the bees prefer an entrance that's about 1.5 inches in diameter, which these guys then kind of took that volume and flattened it, and now have integrated that then into these entrances. So now we have more of an ideal entrance right there.
So you can manage the entrance in 1/3 increments.
Now, does this mean that I don't get to have 120 little entrance reducer sticks that I got to keep up with and go and flip them back and forth? I don't get to play with those anymore.
No, you can probably use them to light the fire.
Yeah, for lighting fires. Okay.
So 1/3 increments the entrance, and the locking mechanism is important because for migratory beekeeping, when we're travelling at 60 mile an hour, 100 kilometres, we don't want the entrance to blow closed. Because a lot of mostly commercial beekeepers mostly ship their bees open entrance. And it's interesting, if you close the hive up, you've got a far greater chance of smothering the hive.
Yeah, yeah.
So the locking mechanism just ensures that you can lock the entrance down in the down position. Moving on to this is a blanking plate, because again, for future proofing, we've got some options that can be installed into this cavity here. I'll cover that off in a minute. And then a ventilated floor. So in an insulated
that's
hive,
standard. This is standard.
this is all standard. This is high grade aluminium, so for corrosion and durability, and powder coated aluminium floor. So that's all standard in the hive. And with an insulated hive, ventilation is also equally important as insulation.
Yeah.
The ability for the bees to draw air up from under the hive. I mean, in summer it's the best spot, because the cooler air is under the hive in the shade here. So they can draw that cool air up through the floor and start that cycling happening that bees do, and manage. They're masters of climate control.
Right.
But you have to give them a way of getting fresh air into the hive. And when they don't need fresh air, they just don't do that. And of course, hot air rises. Mm-hmm. So the hive is, even though you would think in winter, see, we never close this off, in fact. So we get temperatures down to in the 20s Fahrenheit, -6, -5, -6 is pretty common in winter. We never shut this down. And we thought, well, they're going to get cold, but actually they don't, because there's very little heat loss. So
that's true. Yeah, the heat just stays up in the cavity.
Discover once the hive's warm, But the flip side of that is, if you have a window in the top of your 2-story house, and you open the windows in winter, your heat's going to be chimneying out the top. So you're going to have to burn a lot of gas or wood.
That's
you're going to have to burn a lot of them entrance reducers to keep and a lot of wooden boxes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And so, where are we going with this? So you'll notice that all the ventilation for our hive is from the bottom, never from the top. So we discover the bees don't want it from the top. They actually propolis up the hives.
Well, if you go out into the wild, where are they? Right, they're in a knot hole of a tree, and they don't have an upper and lower. They have one entrance, right, and they can actually cause the ventilation to come and pass through that one hole, actually, so they can have incoming air and outgoing air. And this just gives them a little bit way to have a little bit more volume on the incoming side of things. Now, I would want to point out a couple things too. This is the standard base that comes with the product, okay? Now, out of my apiary, I've got a number of hive stands that are 2 cement blocks and then 4x4s resting on top. And if you look at the base here, they fit perfectly here, so they're extremely stable out on my hive stands out there. So it just,
that's right. So
there's a lot of thought, guys, that's gone into this. A lot of problems that have been solved, like right off the bat. And again, I just have to say, it's a wonderful job of engineering, and I'm just so thrilled to see all of this kind of like come together in one product. So we've got a few more features that we'll show you. Everything we got is kind of stacked over here.
Let me just grab the feeder. This is a prototype, so just ignore the colour of the material here. It will be the same material as the other products. It will be white and lightweight. So with the feeder, there's a few problems we had that we needed to solve that we didn't like. First, the problem we have with the hive feeder is it's single purpose, it's liquid feed, but it's often we need to give bees solid nutrition in the form of protein,
right,
and pollen or vegetable protein, whatever. So we wanted to be able to do both in the one feeder. So we created this. We call it the volcano in the center here, with an inspection cover. We can remove this inspection cover and we can just drop our protein in here, and that can be a pollen patty that you grab and you fold it up and just drop it in here. Or a
lot of commercial guys make their own.
That's right.
So their own, stuff. I don't call it a patty, but it's just a big blend.
What we make is a mash.
And drop a mash right on top of there.
So we'll make a mash and we'll put it into a sealed 4-gallon bucket and transport that. And we just grab a handful and drop it in here.
Yeah.
And then pop the cover back on. And then what it means is the bees can come and eat that solid protein, and then they can also continue further up, drop down into here into the liquid compartment and start to drink the liquid. So it's dual purpose. What it means is we don't have to take this off.
Right.
Often it's full of liquid. We want to put some protein in. We've got to pull that off. Usually we spill the sugar all over ourselves.
Yeah.
And then we put the protein, then we put this back on. So now we don't have to do that. So that's all good. The other thing we wanted to make sure is that we could feed in cold conditions. So we wanted the access to the feed right above the cluster.
Close as possible.
Close to the cluster. And we also, with this being insulated and the hives insulated, we find that we can feed a lot later in the colder, into the colder temperatures. The bees, because what happens when the bees get to a certain temperature in terms of getting cold,
the cluster, yeah.
They just shut down, they cluster. You can put 10 gallons of food on top and they won't go get it. They'll starve because they can't break cluster. So the insulated hive does actually assist in extending your feeding period into the winter.
Well, it gives them a broader, like around here, in our neck of the woods, we have 50 degrees is kind of the norm. 50 plus or minus is when they begin to tightly cluster up. And of course, a little bit cooler temp, they're going to cluster real tight. If your colony is small, then the bees have two overriding and overwhelming desires in the winter. One is to be able to eat, of course, but the other and most important is to keep that queen warm. So when they cluster up, if they have a small cluster, they can keep that queen warm, but if it isn't large enough, they will not go eat. They won't break that cluster for fear of losing their queen. So what they're going to do is just sit there and die with food this far away. But with the enhanced insulation here, that cluster's temp, instead of being 50, which we don't know exactly what it is now, but it could be like 40 degrees. So they have a wider temperature range that they can still continue to feed.
And that's exactly right. So I'm thinking else. The other thing, this access to, we've done things like, this is a queen excluder size, all these slots. So we know that we have a product that where we can convert the hive into a 4-frame nuke, and we can have a chat about that. But if we're in that configuration where we've got a divider board here and 2 4-frame colonies, the queen can't cross over through the feeder and down and into the other colony. So that's sort of another little feature. We got some screws here that just pulls the tray, this plastic food grade plastic tray, firmly into the bottom. So even if there's a bit of heat or whatever and the plastic wants to buckle, it actually can't because it's locked into the cavity. We've got the same hive tool protection near layer. We've got the same interlocking design. So the weather, I don't know if you've found it, but in our hive top feeders on our wooden hives, we sometimes get fermentation because you get rain, driving rain coming in, and it's coming in and watering down the solution.
Right.
And so that's all that sort of solves those types of issues.
Wait, before you put that away, we have one. This is probably more unique to US. I don't know for sure. But we have a method of feeding called the mountain camp method. So one of the methods of feeding here in the States is you might take your inner cover, your outer cover, inner cover off, put a piece of newspaper down, and just put raw granulated sugar right on top of that. So with this particular feeder, we can do that very thing, right? We can take off this cover right here and have dry sugar in here. Probably put a sponge or two of water because they got to have the moisture to be able to break down the sugar and eat it. But we can still feed even the mountain camp method, no additional equipment required. So I think that's a pretty neat feature.
Yeah, that's a cool method. We don't have that. We don't really do that in Australia. So I think
very quick way to do it. No mixing of water and no introducing of excess moisture into a hive.
Should have been a little bit more organised here, but let's move on to another product we've just launched in Australia, and it's coming to the USA very soon. And that's an integrated pollen collection system.
Yeah, so that's going to be easy. Yeah.
Yeah. So pollen collection is something that beekeepers have been doing for decades.
Right.
But it's an embuggerance, if I can say that, because you got to fit a product onto the front of your hive, and for migratory beekeeping especially, it's really high labour intensive because they've got to pull it off to move it, or they can have a full
storage. You're looking at a couple hundred hives or more.
Right.
You got those devices that you've got to go store. Now some pollen traps will like fit at the entrance that you keep on for about a day or so, maybe 2, and remove it. Other pollen traps, I've seen those early models where it's actually, like another shallow super type thing, and that you have to take your hive apart and put that pollen feeder on, restack everything, then come back in a day or 2 and unstack, get that pollen trap off of there. So that's a major a major headache there.
And what we saw in our hobbyist customers, because this hive appeals to, we have all sorts of different customers, but in the hobbyist customers, more and more of our enthusiast hobbyists are becoming aware of the health benefits of consuming pollen. Yeah. So people want to put it in their smoothies, on their breakfast cereal. Yeah. And so an integrated pollen collection system for the hive in your backyard is an easy way to capture your own pollen. So we put a lot of design thinking into this product. and we hope you like it. But it's made of 3 parts. We've got the grates mechanism here that installs into that. You saw the blanking cover in the hive. You remove your blanking cover, you install this grate. On the underside, we have a latch mechanism here with an activation switch, and then we have a food grade stainless steel tray that slides into the rails here to catch your pollen. So what the beekeeper will do in the morning before they go to work, they can activate the pollen system by simply turning the lever 180 degrees, and the bees now, so the grate's now in the up position, and the bees climb through here, and as they climb through these holes, it drags a percentage of the pollen off the bees, or a percentage of the bees lose their pollen. So it's probably 60 to 80% in that ballpark. And it drops down into your tray. When you come home from work that afternoon, if you're on a big honey flow, it won't take them, a big pollen flow, it won't actually take too long to fill that. So be careful, because this can fill up very quick. So in the afternoon, you come home and you turn it off, and you pull your tray out, and now you've got your pollen. And there's various videos and instructions.
That's like so easy, guys. That's amazing. Yeah, I love it.
And then for the commercial operator, so this is great for its hobbies, but it's also designed for commercial. So you will see our hive stand and our hive pallet design. It's a high grade stainless steel precision product. It's got a base mechanism with a drawer that slides in, and that drawer can hold, a kilo or more, which is a couple of pounds of pollen. So if you want to run the pollen collector for several days, 3 to 4 days, and do a harvest, that's what that. So that's an optional.
Lots of pollen that way.
You can you can increase the capacity of your pollen receptor with that option.
By using the big pallet. Now we've got 4-way pallets, steel pallets with legs for the commercial guys, but you also have a 2-way pallet, right? A 2-hive stand pallet for backyard beekeepers and whatnot. And that I'm looking forward to as well, because that makes a really nice stand. But then it does give you that additional feature of having a heavier pollen collection. Because one of the things that in my household, we're trying to get more, all natural stuff, and kind of get rid of a lot of these processed foods and whatnot. And the health benefits of pollen are well known and are just amazing. And what an easy way. I mean, what an easy way, right?
And of course, if you're not collecting pollen, it's something, you don't have to remove it to move the hive. Or
do
anything.
And the nice thing too is once that's installed, you don't have to come back and uninstall it and put the blank back in there. You can just leave this in your production hive for like forever, right?
It's a forever installation.
Yeah.
You can install it once. So
yeah,
that's a pollen collection system. I'll move on to some of the future stuff that's coming next year. Hopefully, I don't cause an avalanche here. So, as I might have alluded to earlier in the video, in the discussion, in parallel to this, the last few years we've been building enterprise-grade beekeeping management software. And this is really about empowering beekeepers to keep healthier, more productive bees, and start to log massive amounts of valuable data that I think we're missing out on. And some of the stuff we chatted about this morning around understanding your flora environment. So it's all coming in our software, and I've just released a set of some tuition videos that they're up on the Hive IQ YouTube channel, so check those out. But what we have coming to complement that software is the ability to collect more valuable data automatically. And so this product that you see here is our weight scales. So it integrates, again, similar to the pollen collector, it integrates seamlessly into the hive, and so it's almost invisible technology. Right, so a lot of the technology you see out there are very add-on, and very sort of, there's a box you screw on.
Snap-on kind of stuff.
And it's sitting on a platform. And it's, for migratory beekeeping, that's a problem, because you've got to disassemble all of that.
Can't stack them.
But this, I can just strap this, if this is on a pallet, and I've got 4 smart hives, let's call them smart hives or tech hives, I can put the strap on and load it on the truck like any other hive. So it's really about...
Doesn't change the footprint.
Yeah, so integrated technology, load cells. I mean, we've done thousands of hours of testing to get to this point, and this is the final beta version. But we're in our final testing with the view of releasing the product to the market next year. So watch this space.
So in addition to your load cells, you've got some internal.
Yes, we have internal sensors. So we've developed internal sensors. We're partnering up with some external technology companies that have already got some had great success with building technologies that integrates with our software and our system, our ecosystem. So
we're
we've got some
looking at-
very cool.
Yeah, so you're looking at being able to collect temperature data, humidity data inside the hive. I mean, and looking at the weight. That's a big one. I have questions every year. When's the nectar flow over here in my neck of the woods? Personally, us here in Commerce and where I'm at, and out in more of a rural setting, our nectar flow is over probably about the first week of June, but it's always more of a, based on the calendar, right, and not on the performance of the bees. So with load cells, you can take a look and see, is my weight increasing? Oops, and all of a sudden it kind of flatlines. At that point, guys, you're either going to know you got a problem with a hive and they're dying out, but more than likely what you're going to see is they're no longer bringing in any more nectar. They're full, and that's it. There's nothing else out there to be found. And so at that point, it's like, okay, time to harvest. And
or worse still, it could be a massive honey flow on, but they're full. So
yeah, they could be full, and it's time to go put another super on.
So you're missing out on the bees, and they go on holidays.
No
crazy.
holidays for the bees.
They're not they're workaholics, but once the work's done, then they sit back. You'll see them out in the deck chairs out front, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So this is really important for our business. So the driver behind our thinking here is, we're in Australia, and it's the same here. You guys travel huge distances, your commercial operators. Our hives could be 500 miles away from our base, and they're on a honey flow. There's different weather conditions out there, different rates of nectar and weight gain. So we'll load our truck. It's a big truck. It costs thousands of dollars to fill that thing with diesel. Put the team together, get all the gear packed. We drive 500 miles. We're going to be out there for 3 or 5 days working them. We get there and we got there too early. They had a couple of days of bad weather that we didn't know about.
Oh, goodness.
And they're not ready, so we have to drive it back to base. So that opportunity. Well, that's a cost. That's a real operational cost.
Yeah.
Worse than that is the opportunity cost, because time and time again we've been out to harvest the hives and they're absolutely chock-a-block full. I don't know if you guys use that terminology, but that means really full.
I think I figured out what that means. So
right. So in Australia we call it chock-a-block full, and what it means is when your frames are capped all the way to the bottom, they're actually slowed down before that point. They start slowing down at probably about 2/3 full. And so your bees were probably full a week ago, and if they were filling a box in every 7 to 10 days, then you probably lost 20 pound of honey per hive. So if you've got 1,000 hives, that's a serious business case to invest in technology.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's some of the cool stuff, Harold, and I think we have other stuff coming that we can't probably cover off just yet. We've got
there'll be more features coming, this, that, and the other. And as I mentioned to you before, we probably haven't answered every question. What about this? What about that? Leave them in the comments below, and we'll be happy to try and take care of those as soon as we can. I'm thrilled. I can't wait to see this all come about. Victor, thank you so much for spending time with us.
Thank you,
and coming by and during our wonderful heat. He's got heat back home. Right now it's wintertime back there. They're wearing coats and hats and all that kind of good stuff. I wish we had a little bit of that cool weather, because the humidity here is killing us right now. But that's just part of being the beekeepers, right? That's our season. So anyway, thanks for watching. I hope you watched it till the end. Who knows? But if you have questions, leave them below and we'll take care of them again. This is Harold from Lanier Bee Barn and Victor Croker here from Hive IQ, signing off. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.